The ancient Egyptians believed in life after death. They built elaborate tombs. These were not just burial places, they were gateways to eternity. Deep within these tombs, they left treasures. More importantly, they inscribed prayers. They painted images, all designed to guide the deceased in the afterlife. This is a story about that journey. It is a journey that could be disrupted. The Nile River Valley was a place of life and death. Towering pyramids and temples stood for centuries. They served as a constant reminder of the past. But beneath the desert sands, restless spirits wandered. They were trapped between worlds, unable to find peace. They yearned for their eternal rest. The ancient Egyptians believed that the living had a duty. They had to remember the dead. They honored their ancestors. They made offerings at their tombs, for they knew that the veil between the living and the dead was thin, and sometimes the spirits of the departed would return to seek help from the living. Khonsumhab was a revered priest. He served during the reign of Ramesses II. He was a learned man, wise and compassionate. He dedicated his life to the service of the gods. He acted as an intermediary between the living and the dead. His duties were many. He oversaw the rituals. He deciphered ancient texts. He even ventured into the Necropolis. The Necropolis was a city of the dead. It sprawled across the desert on the west bank of the Nile. It was a place of tombs and temples. It was a place of silence and shadows. Khonsumhab walked among the tombs with respect and reverence. He understood the sacredness of his task. He knew the weight of the afterlife. One day, while performing his duties, Khonsumhab experienced something extraordinary. He felt a cold shiver. A presence made itself known. It was a restless spirit. It was seeking his help. The air grew cold. The shadows seemed to deepen. A figure began to materialize. It was translucent, ethereal. It was the Ka, the spirit, of a man named Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was once a wealthy merchant. He had lived a prosperous life, but his spirit was troubled. He could not find peace in the afterlife. Nebuchadnezzar's voice was a mournful whisper. It echoed through the tomb. He told his tale of woe. Grave robbers had desecrated his final resting place. They stole his possessions. They scattered his remains. Without a proper burial, his journey to the afterlife was disrupted. He was trapped between worlds. Khonsumhab listened intently. His heart was filled with sympathy. He understood the plight of the restless spirit. He knew the importance of a proper burial. He vowed to help. But Nebuchadnezzar was skeptical. Many years had passed. His tomb was lost to the sands of time. Nebuchadnezzar recounted his past. He spoke of his life. He spoke of his wealth. He spoke of his family. He had been a good man. He had lived an honorable life. He deserved a peaceful afterlife. But his soul was heavy with anguish. He was unable to move on. He described the moment the robbers broke into his tomb. He described the desecration. He described the scattering of his remains. His voice trembled with rage. He was filled with the pain of betrayal. He was denied his rightful place in the afterlife. Khonsumhab listened patiently. He let Nebuchadnezzar unburden his soul. Khonsumhab knew that Nebuchadnezzar's story was not uncommon. Grave robbers were a constant threat. They sought to plunder the wealth of the dead. But their actions had dire consequences. They disrupted the delicate balance between life and death. Khonsumhab placed a reassuring hand on the spectral figure. He promised to help Nebuchadnezzar find peace. He vowed to restore his tomb. He would find his remains. He would ensure that Nebuchadnezzar could continue his journey in the afterlife. Nebuchadnezzar was doubtful. Centuries had passed since his death. The desert sands shifted. They swallowed everything in their path. His tomb was long forgotten, but Khonsumhab was determined. He would not abandon this lost soul. He would honor his promise. Khonsumhab knew that time was of the essence. The longer a spirit remained earthbound, the more it suffered. He had to act quickly. He had to find Nebuchadnezzar's tomb. He had to restore order to the afterlife. Khonsumhab assembled a group of skilled workers. They would help him in his quest. He studied ancient maps. He consulted with other priests. He searched for any clues that would lead him to Nebuchadnezzar's tomb. His search took him deep into the Necropolis. The desert sun beat down on them relentlessly. The workers toiled tirelessly. They followed Khonsumhab's every instruction. They dug through the sand. They moved rocks. They cleared debris. They searched for any sign of the lost tomb. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Just when their hope began to dwindle, they had a breakthrough. They unearthed a piece of carved limestone. It was a fragment of a wall. Khonsumhab felt a surge of excitement. They were close. Soon the entrance was revealed. It was as Nebuchadnezzar described. Khonsumhab entered the tomb cautiously. He could feel the presence of the restless spirit. He knew that Nebuchadnezzar was watching. Consamhab and his men worked tirelessly. They restored the tomb to its former glory. They gathered the scattered remains. They placed them in a new sarcophagus. They performed the proper rituals. They made offerings of food and drink. They sought to appease Nebuchadnezzar's spirit. As the final prayers were uttered, the air grew still. The temperature returned to normal. The shadows seemed to retreat. Consamhab felt a sense of peace. He knew that Nebuchadnezzar's spirit was finally at rest. As we explore the ruins of ancient Egypt, we are reminded of the past. We are reminded of the people who lived and died along the banks of the Nile. Their stories echo through time. They remind us that death is not the end. It is merely a transition. The ancient Egyptians believed in the power of memory. They believed that as long as a person was remembered, they lived on. So the next time you gaze upon an ancient artifact or read a story from a bygone era, take a moment to remember. Remember the people who came before us. Remember their stories. And remember that even in death, there is a glimmer of eternity. Like and subscribe for more thrilling stories.